Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Welsh, and I am the Dean of the Bush School of Government and Public Service here at Texas A&M, and it is a huge privilege to be in that job and an even bigger privilege to welcome you here tonight. Thanks for taking your time to join us. We have a great program, I believe, tonight because the Bush School is all about service, and tonight is all about that cornerstone of public life, service. I love the definition that President Bush once gave, where he said that the definition of any successful life must include service to others. And I think we're going to be talking about most of this evening. He's obviously spread that to his family. We try very hard to spread it to the Bush School family because it's one of the things we stand for here and one of the things our namesake always stood for during his life of public service. A couple of people I'd like to introduce to you. First of all, from our sponsors, the Bank of America tonight, Mr. John Anderson and Ms. Lauren Hoffman. Would you please stand up and just let us say thank you? We also have the real privilege tonight of having Congressman Bill Flores, our own congressman here, along with his wife Gina. Thank you both for being here. Thank you, sir. My partners in crime here at the Bush Center, Mr. David Jones, the CEO of the George Bush Library Foundation, is here in the front row. And Mr. Warren Finch, the director of the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum, is also here tonight. And then the penultimate guest, Mr. Neil Bush, great advocate, member of our advisory board at the Bush School, most importantly, a very proud father, is here tonight. And another member of our advisory board, Ms. Lynn Schlemeyer, also a member of the Texas A&M Foundation staff, is here this evening. This event is run by the Mosbacher Institute. And the Mosbacher Institute is led incredibly well by Dr. Lori Taylor. And I'd like Lori to come up, please, and introduce our speaker for this evening. And as she's coming, I'd like to just tell you that this lady is remarkable in her own right. It does phenomenal work for us and brings programs like this throughout the course of the academic year here to the Bush Center. Lori, thank you for your efforts, and the microphone is yours.
I hesitated to come to the stage for a moment because I didn't want to cut him off. He was getting on a roll. Thank you all so much for coming. This is a very important event to us in the Mosbacher Institute. This is our annual program on volunteerism. This was endowed by Bank of America in 2000 in an effort to educate individuals and corporations on the importance of volunteer and nonprofit activities in today's society. And we think that our guest speaker this evening just epitomizes the way that creative thinking can really make a difference in public service. Lauren Bush-Loren is the founder and CEO of Feed, a social business whose mission is to create good products that help feed the world. In 2004, she became the honorary student spokesman for the UN World Food Program. In that role, she traveled to various countries and learned about the issues of hunger and poverty firsthand. Upon her return to the States, Mrs. Bush-Loren was inspired to create a consumer product that would engage people in the seemingly overwhelming fight to end world hunger. In 2005, she conceptualized the idea for Feed by designing the initial feed bag, which, when purchased, feeds one child in school for 1 year. In 2007, Ms. Bush-Loren founded Feed. Every product sold has a measurable donation attached to it, and to date, the social business has been able to provide nearly 95 million meals globally through the World Food Foundation and Feeding America. Feed has also supported nutritional supplements around the world, providing over 3.7 million children with vitamin A supplements through the World Food Program and the U.S. Fund for UNICEF. For her work with Feed, Ms. Bush-Loren was named to Fortune magazine's Most Powerful Women Entrepreneurs in 2009 and Inc.'s 30 Under 30 in 2010. In 2014, she was named one of Forbes' 30 Under 30 social entrepreneurs and Crane's 40 Under 40. In 2015, she was named a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. No counting on your fingers to try and figure out exactly how old she is. She routinely speaks at global conferences that focus on business, philanthropy, and the issues of hunger and poverty. She's born in Denver, but she grew up in Houston, so we're claiming her. She graduated from Princeton University in 2006 with a BA in anthropology and a certificate in photography. She and her family live in New York City, where she's currently feverishly working to launch her first feed shop and cafe in Brooklyn. I want to hear more about this. Please welcome to the stage Lauren Bush-Loren.
Thank you, Lori, for that lovely introduction. There's not much more to say, but I will say a few things. Truly, thank you to the Bush School and all of you all for coming out today. It means so much to me personally to be here at this wonderful school that bears my grandfather's name, and to be here to share my life's work so far is just really personally very special. So thank you. I'd like to start, if you guys don't mind humoring me, close your eyes. And I would like you to imagine, or remember rather, the last time you were hungry. How did that make you feel? Were you tired? Were you lethargic? Were you quick-tempered? Now, open your eyes. That is a feeling that 795 million people around the world feel almost every day. 1 in 9 people globally are hungry. It's often referred to in development work as the birth lottery. Literally, because of where you're born, you could be born into a life of chronic hunger and malnutrition. Hunger still, unfortunately, kills more than AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria combined. And even here in our own great country, 49 million Americans are food insecure, relying pretty much on a regular basis on food pantries, soup kitchens, to get by. And it goes without saying, but hunger very much affects children disproportionately. When children's brains and bodies are developing, especially between ages 1 to 5, if kids don't receive that proper nutrition, they're often not only physically stunted, they can be mentally stunted. So it's really, truly crucial for children to get that proper nutrition, especially at those early ages, so that they can live up to their full God-given potential with the proper bodily and mental functions. And then this was me. This was bright-eyed, optimistic sophomore in college. I had the amazing, life-changing opportunity to start traveling around the world with the UN World Food Program. And at the time, I was intellectually curious about, poverty and hunger and what I could personally do to help in those realms, and what programs and organizations were doing on the ground to make a difference. But it still felt very abstract. It felt very far away. But if I want to back up even further, it's a little blurry. I would say my journey began here. The idea that public service was something that was pretty much expected in my family. It was something that we all aspired to do. And obviously, being around my grandfather from that early age, that was just so part of his ethos. He exuded the fact that public service was, the life to have. And I'm just so grateful that my beginnings were looking up to him, wanting to do good for the world, looking up to my parents. My dad here is so active in Houston and around the country doing good. And just to have those examples firsthand, not in a book, but literally, around the sofa, telling you about their work and what they care about and what they're passionate about and what's making a difference, was just truly, such a gift. So fast forward back to my very first trip to Guatemala with the UN World Food Program. I was just really taken aback by the fact that, again, children literally just because of where they're born, are born into a life of poverty and hunger. And often at this point, I had thought of hunger as this very far away, very abstract world issue. And yet I took a short 3.5-hour flight to Guatemala. And this was my very first stop on that very first trip with the World Food Program. Sorry. We were taken to a therapeutic feeding center where children are taken. We all have the crying gene, so excuse me. I'm sure you've witnessed this before. But at this therapeutic feeding center, children are literally taken because they're starving. They need immediate intervention. They need immediate help. And I walked into this clinic, and children were being fed. They were getting their lunch meal. And, you expect to see kids sort of curious and bouncing off the walls and energetic. And unfortunately, the kids in this clinic were just lethargic. You could just tell they were physically ill. Some didn't even have the strength to feed themselves, and they were being fed by their families or different caretakers. And that was, extremely eye-opening for me. And as we were leaving, a mother came up, obviously I'll never forget, and put her son in my arms. And I would have thought, would have been about 4 years old, 3. He was actually 7 years old. So just to, the effects of hunger and chronic malnutrition that this poor little boy had suffered, again, just because of where he was born, in this community in rural Guatemala, to a family that couldn't quite provide for him the way they wanted to and needed to. And this is what happens. And then, on a much more hopeful note, the second stop, we sort of gathered ourselves after that extremely emotional and sort of jarring experience and drove off a short 25, 30 minutes to a school. And at the school, kids were vibrant and playing and curious and rambunctious and everything you would, hope and think kids should be. And we arrived just at school at the kind of lunch hour there, and kids were lining up with their little, plates and cups, and they were receiving a free school lunch. And what I later learned and have seen happening around the world is that these children were going to school not only to get that education, but truly to get that school meal. This was a way for kids, an entry point for education. It was a way for parents to justify sending their children to school, for paying, to pay for those school fees, knowing that that was going to provide with it a free school lunch. So I continued to travel around the world. I would get sort of funding in college and take different trips during spring breaks, summer breaks, any breaks I had, because I was just desperate to kind of travel and see and try to understand the issue of poverty and hunger better. So this picture was taken in Kenya. And what I found often as well, in so many countries, unfortunately, girls' education is valued even less than boys' education. And in those countries, the World Food Program, which is amazing, they use food as sort of an equalizer. So if a girl attends school with a good attendance record, they'll even send her home with extra food rations for her and her family. So it's really using food almost as a bribery tool to get not only kids, but to get girls specifically in school. And the amazing thing that's been really proven out over the years in terms of development work is getting kids educated, but especially girls educated, in situations where poverty persists is this, silver bullet. Because girls will be better educated, they'll have kids later in life, their kids will be better fed, better educated. So it's a wonderful way to help break the poverty cycle that so many children are born into. And truly to see that school meals was this really powerful, so simple, but so powerful a tool that could really, break some of these cultural norms where sending a girl to school just wasn't the priority. Introduce a school meal and introduce extra food rations for the family, and it becomes a priority. So my travels continued. I studied anthropology and I studied photography at Princeton, and so these are some of the pictures I took in different countries I visited, from a refugee camp in Chad with Sudanese refugees to visiting Sri Lanka about 8 days after the tsunami. So, I have such an appreciation for the complexity of the development work that's happening around the world through the UN, through other amazing NGOs that are on the ground and doing that hard work. And whether it's because of war or natural disaster or just famine, the reasons why hunger persists in so many countries, it's so complex. So I really walked away from these travels and meeting these families and these communities, and especially children, really wanting personally to do something, but honestly not knowing what that would be. And I felt this sense of extreme inspiration, but also extreme frustration, because I would come back to my life in college, and I would tell my friends about my travels, and I would show them some pictures, and I would try to talk to other student groups, but it just felt so massive and so abstract and so overwhelming. So really for years, I racked my brain around, how can I make this more accessible? The school feeding program is amazing. It is changing millions of children's lives around the world, and yet more funding is needed, more awareness is needed about the issue of hunger, and specifically about school feeding. And I felt this disempowered feeling of like, what can I, one student, one young person in her early 20s actually do to make a difference? And at the same time, I love design and I love fashion, so I was also debating, personally, what would my life path be, and knowing again from an early age, wanting service to be a big part of that, but I didn't know how. And so many people, who I went to for advice at the time said, oh, go make money and then give it back. And I just felt that, no, I want to start giving back now. I want to create a way for others to do that, not after they've made their money and they have a little extra to give back. I want to be the conduit for people to be inspired and to be activated around the issue of hunger. And like I said, at the same time, I love design and fashion. So between traveling to Africa, I would be taking fashion design classes in New York and sort of in my head toggling these two very different life paths. And that's when I had the aha moment for the first feed bag. I thought, why not create a consumer good product, a bag, something that people can wear around and be proud of, and also, organically spread the word about, that would also give back in a significant way. So this was the very first bag I made. It was also designed to look like the bags of food rations I saw being distributed around the world. I really wanted, the design to reflect the cause. So this is it, and each bag we make has a number on it. So this number signifies that for every Feed One bag sold, we're able to feed one child in school for 1 year. So I had this sort of inkling that, people, especially young people, my peers, my fellow students who didn't have a large checkbook or a lot of money or time to give at that point in their lives, want to do something. How to make something very easy, very appealing, very tangible, and thus very meaningful. And that's how the feed bag was born. So we've gone on to create several different products, different styles, mainly bags. Every product we make and sell has a number on it, and that signifies, again, the amount of meals we're able to give or the amount of children we're able to feed. And that has been our model from the beginning. Our mission is to create good products that help feed the world. And I started Feed as a for-profit social business. And this was about 10 years ago now, in 2007, really before the term social business was talked about as a viable business classification. And I just felt that it was best suited for what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to be the organization on the ground giving the food. I wanted to be the company, the conduit for people, for consumers to give back to these organizations. I didn't want to replicate the systems that they had already established and continue to establish that are so vast and so complex and so good. I wanted to support those systems. So to date, too, the model is to really work through, creating products, selling product, creating these partnerships that we've been able to do with Whole Foods and Target and HSN, The Gap, Pottery Barn, and many others. And with that, funnel the money back into the programs on the ground, whether it's abroad or whether it's working here through Feeding America, to do the good, to get the meals to the end recipient. So really from the beginning, that has been the feed model. And through that, and through our many consumers, we call them our feed community, coming together to support our mission, to support our company, to buy feed bags, to host feed suppers, we've been able to give over 95 million meals. And the cool thing there is it's so many people have made this number happen. I am like one small part of that. The fact that consumers and this wave of conscious consumerism has really come about, even more so in the last 5 years, I would say, where consumers, especially young people, are really wanting to support companies with a mission that are doing good and giving back authentically. It's just so heartwarming. It's so inspiring to see. So, we are one brand among many that are truly doing good work. And it's neat to see in the context of a, public policy school, there's so many directions to go into the world and do good and be a public servant. And I think, when I started Feed, or before, I really thought, gosh, I either need to join a nonprofit, join the UN, or, become a public servant and maybe go the political route to make a difference. And I feel that that's no longer the case. The rules don't exist in the same way, and it's really encouraged now to go forth and kind of create your own path to giving back. So for all the students out there who are, sitting where I was sitting about 15 years ago, I would, really encourage you to do that, to dig deep on what your personal passions are, and strive to make a difference in a way that is uniquely yours and yours only. Because I think, to end, I feel that we lived obviously in such an interconnected world that's getting even more interconnected every day, and yet still poverty persists. Yet some people wake up every day and their basic human needs aren't met. And that to me is unacceptable. And these are solvable issues. These are not, there's enough food in the world to feed everyone, which is surprising to some. So these are things within our grasp to fix. And God willing, within my lifetime, we will see a fixing to that. But I do believe it will take a coming together of individuals like everyone here tonight who really, care deeply about the world and want to see a better future for the earth, for humanity, and to kind of come to the table with great ideas, again, that are uniquely tied to your passions and your resources and your background. And what I've found, that's been so magical throughout the 10 years of doing Feed is that sort of passion and excitement and purity of intention is really very contagious. People want to be a part of that. And I have seen some of the, great, amazing business leaders join on the little Feed bandwagon to want to give back and to do good. And Feed has been that conduit for them to engage their customers and their companies to do so as well. So it's just, it's been such an amazing journey for me. I would say I'm so proud of what my team and I have been able to do in the last 10 years. There's so much more to be done, which is why I'm enlisting everyone here as fellow feeders to join our community and to engage with us, but also I think to do that, that soul searching and that have that moment of discomfort and not knowing what you truly can do or feeling like, gosh, I could just do a little more, and kind of sitting with that and then coming out of that and being action-oriented and really soliciting your friends and your family and rallying people around what is important to you. But in doing so, too, to be mindful, of the fact that, again, so many kids are born into situations that they didn't choose, that they have very, they lack the hope and the resources to pull themselves out of. And that's when, we need to intervene and we need to offer a helping hand. I might be a bit of a liberal in the Bush family in that way. No, I don't think it's political. I just, I truly believe, it's not political. This is a human issue. This is not Republican. It's not Democrat. It is, again, lifting up innocent lives to be able to live to their fullest potential. Thank you. Yeah, and together, hopefully we can move from a world that needs feed to a world that is well-fed and well-nourished. Thank you.
Microphone up here so you could hear me, but I forgot. So now I'd like to invite to the stage our very own Will Brown. to engage in a conversation. We could try to get someone who really knows what they're talking about, and then we've got Will. So Professor Brown serves as the director for the Nonprofit Management Program. He teaches nonprofit management, social innovation and entrepreneurship, human resource management, and capstone courses. He earned his master's and doctorate in org psychology from Claremont Graduate University, and his research focuses on nonprofit governance, strategy, and organizational effectiveness. His best-selling, most recent book, a textbook, is entitled Strategic Management in Nonprofit Organizations, published in 2014. Please welcome Will Brown.
Get mic'd.
Yeah, get my mic on. Thank you. Lauren, thank you for coming, and what an inspirational talk you were able to give us and lay out that picture of how that happened and how you came to the idea, right? Because I think so much of what's intriguing is the innovation so maybe you kind of glossed over that piece of, I was doing design and I had these pictures of children in need. Talk a little bit more about how that came about, how you saw these two coming together.
Yeah, it definitely came from, I would say, a period of about 3 years of frustration, of sort of tumbling, in my head, again, seeing the need on one hand, but then really frustrated and thinking through what I myself could do. And at the same time, I kind of tried to put myself in the shoes of, which I am at the time, an average student, with limited resources and time and energy, and someone who maybe isn't, thinking to go off and join the Peace Corps and dedicate my life in that way to public service, but yet want to do something. And the feedback to me was that easy, simple, tangible, measurable way to engage people that was really hopeful and solution-oriented, and it's not about, awareness raising, which I was seeing being done with students that was sort of disempowering, and sign this petition, but what are you actually doing, and digging in on, and creating something, again, that's sort of this badge of honor, this humble brag that people can wear around and give to friends, and feel great about knowing exactly the meals they're giving and the kids they're helping.
One of the phrases that I saw of yours, which is the people's choices of what to buy and where have the power to change the world. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think, it's so neat to see in the last 10 years, there's so many more companies like Feed who are part of what's sort of considered the conscious consumerism movement, where giving back or having a supply, more sustainable supply chain or more transparent supply chain, or really having this sort of triple bottom line is as core to their business and not sort of a CSR nice to have on the side, is just so prevalent now and sort of expected. And it's been neat to see some of the bigger players, the bigger giants of industry, come around to this notion that I think did start small and as this kind of groundswell, and now it's loud enough where big and small companies alike have to pay attention to the fact that they need to be actively giving back to the community they're hoping to do business with.
Yeah, what is the role of business in this? What is the role, you're touching on it there a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think it's exciting that businesses are called to be a part of this, now more than ever before. It's not just, nonprofits, like businesses are over here making money for their shareholders and nonprofits are over here doing good for the world. It's, businesses need to actively be a part of that equation. And not to say that businesses should stop doing what they're doing and, not make money for their shareholders, because it takes margin to have mission. So I do realize, you need to be profitable in order to give back and make a difference. But I do think it's just about it's kind of finding that balance. And it's been proven time and again that businesses that have that ingrained social mission have a much better retention rate. Their consumers are much more engaged. It's sort of, in a way, it's a marketing budget without needing a marketing budget, because you're, that mission and that story and that purpose is your marketing. And I think now, again, more than ever, when everything is so accessible to us, consumers really sniff out and look for and seek out supporting companies that have that ingrained, higher purpose.
Right. I was curious about the balance, right? Mm-hmm. That's what many businesses will feel like, it's about the profit or the margin that needs to get created. How in your own organization do you?
I know we're different, because I am the majority shareholder of Feed, so I can decide how profitable or non-profitable we can be. But to a certain extent, it's about keeping lights on and being able to hire talented people. And I empathize with small business holders and runners. I am one, obviously, because it's not easy to create a sustainable company, especially over 10 years, where cycles of retail have changed and partners have come and gone, and all the daily rigmarole of that. No. I think it's about, as a founder or as a shareholder, setting that intention. So, or as an employee, you have influence over, the companies you work in, and employers are cognizant of wanting to keep you happy and in your job and working hard. And I do believe having that sort of ingrained sense of purpose across the company as a whole, it's been proven can bolster profits as well as retention rates and all the other good stuff companies want.
So what do you do?
I don't have the magic margin number of what to give versus not.
Right.
I've chosen what it is for Feed. I'm not saying it works across all companies, but sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking about you talked about having the purpose, or how and you've got a really when you think about what your organization is trying to do, it's incredibly complex, right? You're reaching all the way down to design, people in developing countries. You're thinking about the source of the products. You're thinking about how it's getting created and the value chain that gets and all of that, and then all the way up to the product itself and how that's marketed and communicated. And then you have this whole process of trying to get the money back in some ways, right? So it's like you've got, most businesses are complex, but you've added a whole nother layer of
tell me about it. Yeah.
complexity about how now all of a sudden, in multiple ways, right? So it's not a triple bottom line, it's a quadruple bottom line or something. And there's a lot of decision making going on. So I'm curious about if you've got examples or stories about how you help keep that purpose in mind and how there are trade-offs, right?
Yeah, there definitely are trade-offs. And I'd say, what started as very much a very, passionate, heart-led idea coming into a business is now, more professionalized. And we have, with every product we make, we know we need to build in this much margin, not only for the meals, but also to run our business and keep the lights on. And we're constantly, making sure that we're at least, meeting our minimum meal guarantee per item, which for us is between 5 to 10% of the retail costs. Okay. Sort of the line in the sand we've drawn. But then also, of course, making enough money to justify, the team and the time that go into producing good product. And I'd say candidly, making products that are sustainable or fair trade, it's hard. Right. And we have many areas that we could even improve. So we're constantly, I don't think we've figured it out. I'd say we're doing our very best and constantly as a team, looking at all parts of our business and trying to refine and do better. Yeah,
because it is really, others have tried or people have tried to do pieces of it or pieces of their work. At what point, so you made that first canvas bag or the first little piece and you started to sell some of those, and at what point, this was a question that was submitted, did you kind of get an idea, this might actually work?
Ooh, 2 points. The first was I saw a random stranger carrying a feed bag down the street, which I was like, I'll never forget that block in New York. So that was a moment, not when I thought
Did you run over to him?
I did. I was like just so taken aback and happily shocked that it was like out in the world and someone was carrying it. So we started selling on Amazon.com. They were our first retailer for the first sort of year and a half. So you get, sales reports, and they kept reordering. So you know, someone's buying feed bags out there. But then to actually see it in the flesh being carried down the street was amazing. But the major one, when I was like, okay, this is a good idea, is we did a partnership with Whole Foods. They were one of our first big kind of retail partners. And actually pre having the first prototype of the bag, being from Texas, I love Whole Foods and really thought of Whole Foods as the ideal retailer, because you're shopping for yourself and your groceries and you're paying a premium probably. So why not be giving back at the same time to help feed kids? So my dad actually drove me to Austin. I think I was probably a junior in college or a senior, and we literally knocked on the headquarters of the Whole Foods, and someone sort of took pity and like showed us in and sat us down. And at the time, I remember this, Dad, the woman was very gracious, but was like, oh, we're really focused on obesity, not hunger. And I was like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like, we can do both. And yet they're both very intertwined. And at that point, I didn't have a bag to show. This was all me just saying, I have this idea. It's gonna be a bag, and it, be reusable and eco-friendly, and it'll also give back to feed kids. So she sort of politely showed us the door. And then I designed, I was like, I still feel like this is a good idea. So I was able to figure out how to make the first bag prototype, again, inspired by the bags of like food rations I saw being distributed. And at that point, I thought, okay, I feel like I just need to get this in front of someone. And as luck would have it, John Mackey, the CEO, founder of Whole Foods, came to talk at my university. So I like squirreled my way into the talk with my bag. And then I squirreled my way into a smaller dinner he had with students after, and I sat next to him. Oh, wow. I'm usually not this pushy, but I put my bag like next to him, facing him, and it kind of worked up the nerve throughout dinner to be like, oh, I have this like bag idea. And at that point, he was like exhausted by students and their weird ideas. But he very nicely was like, okay, we'll talk to my deputy who pinged me to someone to ping me to someone to someone. So fast forward, I graduated by this point. 2 years later, I was still like, gosh, I know feedback's a good idea. I know Whole Foods is a great partner, even though they don't see it yet. They will. And a friend of a friend was like the gourmet food buyer for the Northeast region of Whole Foods. Something, not John Mackey level, definitely a more in the weeds person. And we met, and she loved it, and she became our internal champion. So by the end, we literally went to all 12 regions of Whole Foods, because each region has their own kind of buying power.
Visited with each one of these people.
Visited with each one, made the pitch. And internally, she was trying to help rally it. But as a company, they're very, given they're buying local produce, they're very decentralized in that way. So literally, did the road trip, making the sale. But amazingly so, they saw the value at this point. They had just outlawed plastic bags. So they're sort of into the reusable bag movement. That was right in I think 2009. And they ended up buying over 400,000 bags.
Yeah, and how could you make so many?
We had their help. We had to enlist help, and
all of a
literally
sudden
went
there
to
was an
China
order
to see how this was going to happen. But that ended up feeding all the school children of Rwanda for a year.
Oh my gosh.
Just through that one partnership. And really neat, I was able to take some of these executives and that gourmet food buyer with me to Rwanda to go and sort of visit the schools and just to see, at that point we're working out of my little rat-infested apartment in New York, and to see something just go to scale that quickly, again, with the right customers and with the right partner, was obviously extremely reinforcing at that moment.
Right. But there was a lot of hard work going into that
nothing comes
relationship.
easily. But all well worth it. It was wonderful.
Yeah, advice, you're right. I think the audience is probably full of a lot of people very much like you who see the challenges in the world, sometimes are frustrated with no one. So advice, what do you say to I don't know, some of the students in the audience perhaps.
Yeah, I think, following your passion and kind of taking that time to grapple and reflect on what you personally feel really passionate about, and what you can offer and what, organization that might align with. It's not necessarily about starting your own thing and taking that leap, although it's a fun ride for the most part. It can also just be about joining, other great organizations and bringing your talents and your fresh ideas and your work constantly needing those fresh ideas. So I think it's, but not losing hope and not losing sight of, ultimately that calling for public service and that want to do something good for the world and see change.
Because that was what was a big motivator for you.
Big time, yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about some of the charitable or the philanthropic work that you're doing and how, because that's a lot of work too, right? We talked a little bit about philanthropy, and it's challenging to figure out how do you support a system without stepping on a system or, so how does that work? Tell us, so you didn't get into that a lot, about how you actually try to do that in a way.
Yeah, so definitely with the giving side, we have over the years, mainly the UN World Food Program, who again my journey began with, is our largest beneficiary. But we knew, I'd say about 4 years in, knowing there's a need here in America and knowing the World Food Program only operates in the poorest countries around the world, we really did want to give back here. So we made the conscious decision, and I sort of personally went on this, hunger road trip, if you will, across America to, talk to people on the ground and really learn about that issue. So for me, it's always started with that on the ground experience, like talking to the people that are literally doing the work, not necessarily in the headquarters of the office, talking to the, food bank operator, the soup kitchen operator, and trying to hear from them. A learning there, actually, given we're giving mainly or only school meals abroad, I wanted to help give school meals here. And lucky for us in America, there's obviously more of a safety net than there is in so many countries, and kids who qualify get, free or reduced school lunch. But I thought, gosh, we could help give more lunches and give healthier lunches. But quickly found out that, the USDA, and there's just many controls around school lunches, and it's not something as sort of a donor organization that you can necessarily get involved in. There is now different programs where you can support. This is public school, charter schools, and otherwise are different. But that took going to a few conferences and talking to different executive chefs of like New York public schools and different people who really, again, are on the ground doing the work. So I'm definitely a fan of sort of the ground up when I'm evaluating, where we want the money to go. And also from we have to balance, it's like the giving side, but also the consumer facing side. So wanting to take our customers on that journey of giving with us.
How do you do that?
And that's, marketing and communication as best we can. But at the same time, if you're giving everywhere to all different types of causes, I think you lose people's trust and attention. So we've tried to keep it, again, very simple, with the meal metric attached to every product. We really have, 3 main giving partners: the World Food Program, UNICEF, and Feeding America. So keeping it kind of simple with best-in-class organizations. And then really saying we're going to do what we do best. We are going to, help be the conduit for this, the funds, whether it be through product sales or feed suppers, which is something I can tell you guys about, or these feed runs we do, to allow people to engage with the cause of hunger in a way that other organizations who are running the programs on the ground don't have time to engage necessarily to the degree we do, people and consumers.
Yeah, so we could talk about that. How is it that you engage? Because part of it is there's an innate appeal, right, amongst many consumers, and both understanding that, and then how do you nurture that and support it in such a way that people want to be a part of what's going on.
And that's the art form, which we're constantly learning and refining and thank God for social media because we can get real-time feedback from our consumers and really have that dialogue with them. And part of the reason, which was alluded to earlier, so a few ways we do it. So I'll go back to Feet Supper and then I'll tell you about our newest adventure to launch soon. For years, people would be like, I bought a bag, I bought 5 bags, what else can I do? And instead of saying, oh, buy another bag.
I only need so many bags.
You only need so many bags, which I appreciate, having way too many myself. I didn't have anything to do. I would send them off to different, local organizations. We actually partnered with Points of Light Foundation to have an area on our website where you can type in your zip code and up comes local volunteer activities. So trying every which way we could to sort of channel this extra goodwill towards the cause of hunger. And yet we still felt like we were losing people. So at the same time, while most of our business is done out of the for-profit, we also have a sister nonprofit, the Feed Foundation. But we don't use that to solicit donations. Like if someone's just gonna write us a check without engaging in Feed, we'd rather they just go direct to the nonprofits doing the great work. Yet we came up with an activation we called Feed Supper. So for a month each fall, we encourage our Feed community to come together and truly share a meal. So to host a Feed Supper, whether it's in your home, your favorite restaurant, or your school, in your dorm room, kind of however you want to do it, whatever scale you want to do it at, and ask everyone who attends to give at least 10 meals. Which is roughly about $1.10. So it's very low cost of entry, and it's more about again just getting people together and empowering them to feel like they can truly make a difference. And it's doing something we also believe in, which is sharing good food with good people and your friends, and having that educational but also sort of soulful moment around a table, and realizing how lucky we are to have that.
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can imagine somebody would say, I've done this and I want to do more, but how do I get connected? And you don't want to just
send them off, which we were doing. And so we've had 3 years of Feed Suppers. We're going to reactivate in the fall, and we launch a website. So it's easy for hosts to kind of sign up to become a host, and then send out that fundraising link to their friends they're inviting over, who can then in turn make donations. And we get great, chefs and different people to give us recipes, and we make a little feed toolkit which you can decorate your table with, and it has facts about hunger. So trying to encourage that conversation as well as that donation moment. But all those donations funnel through the Feed Foundation straight out to, we're really just a pass-through to the organizations, World Food Program and Feeding America.
Organizations that
exactly.
You work with. So sometimes there's a little pushback, right, on this idea of consumerism as philanthropy, and philanthropy and consumerism. Are we tapping into something that potentially isn't really charitable, or isn't? What's your reaction to some of those critiques or some of those thoughts about?
Yeah, I think there's definitely can be skepticism out there. At the same time, and I think that's probably warranted in some situations. Unfortunately, it's always good to be mindful that some companies do use kind of good washing or greenwashing as marketing tactics, and they're not giving back as much as you may think. So I think as a consumer, to be kind of vigilant is a good thing. At the same time, I've always been a consumer to kind of tend towards the Newman Zone or the different brands or companies that are doing good for the world. And we do have so much power, not just as philanthropists, but as consumers every day. And to be mindful of where those consumer dollars are spent, on what companies and how they source and all that good stuff is huge. And it's, you're seeing that there's so much disruption now with major players and major industries going for the smaller, more authentic, more, the better options, brands that have more of that authentic, give back or purpose, or, transparent supply chain. So I think things are definitely moving
in our everyday
in
choices.
that direction via consumers making those everyday choices. Yeah.
You have quite a bit of power. You were going to tell us about another initiative that you had going on.
Oh gosh, yes. How'd I forget? Keep me up at night. We are getting ready next week to launch our first feed, like little store and cafe in Brooklyn, New York, which is so exciting.
I bet you that does keep you at it.
It does. I'm like, lots of moving pieces still, but and really for us, you know, it's no different than most stores, but everything in it will give back. So every latte you buy, which is sort of a fair trade roast we've sourced through a partner, will give a meal. Every muffin you buy will give a meal. Every feed bag obviously gives meals. We've also curated a selection of like-minded feed finds that will all give back and give meals. So I'm just, you know, personally excited to see our brand, which has primarily been an online brand, come to life in a physical way, and to really create that community center for our mission, for our cause, for like-minded, you know, causes. So we're going to partner with the New York Food Bank for New York City. We're going to organize like bi-monthly volunteer activities through the store. So really, again, using it as a way to galvanize even more people around our cause.
Yeah, I bet you are kept up late at night with all of these different. So you talked a little bit about, I'm thinking about our students or people, in reference to find that mix and that piece, and how we both either find a partner or do we start something new, or and what was the value perhaps for you maybe in starting something new, or what's the value for others? And just talking with another member about how there's a lot of starts sometimes, and we wonder whether we're supposed to collectively come together, and so maybe just talk about that for me.
So mine happened to me in many ways, actually. So the World Food Program, I had initially designed and intended the bag, even when I was pitching it to John Mackey at Princeton, for them to be the seller of the bag. Okay. And at some point, I finally had a purchase order from Amazon.com, 500 bags. So 500 kids would be fed for a year through this first order alone. So if it went nowhere else, I was like, great, we fed 500 kids. And the World Food Program sort of came back. They had run it through legal finally and said, look, we can't be the vendor of this bag. And at that point, I was like, well, we're in business. I figured out the factory and the back end supply chain piece, and I have this order. Like, what are you telling me at the 18th hour?
I'm sorry, we have to.
We have to go forward. And that's the minute I kind of incorporated as an LLC, you know, literally just to fulfill that first order in hopes that feed would become what it is today and continue to grow, but not knowing if it would. So I, you know, could sit here and lie and say it was intentional. It wasn't that intentional. It was like more out of necessity to make that first thing happen. But I've seen so many, you know, different startups over the years.
But I was going to say, isn't that pretty common?
It can be. So I think if you see that you have something unique to offer the world that no one else is doing, or a different approach that no one else is doing, and if you can't win others over to doing what you want to do and see the value in it, and yet, you know, you have proof that, or not proof even, a good feeling that it's going to work, then I think it's worth taking that leap and going for it alone. But I am a fan of, you know, finding partnerships. My God, Feed would be nowhere without like-minded partnerships or without our giving partners. So I do think so much about making anything successful in the nonprofit or for-profit realm is that collaboration and partnership piece.
But sometimes you have to move out on your own.
Yeah, if there's a clear nonsensical roadblock, you have to keep going.
Right, because I think so much of what we hear sometimes too is, we need to get something done. It's so important to try and get something done, and that there can be pushbacks and bureaucracies or systems. It's wonderful to hear that you worked it all the way up and they came back and said, no, we can't sell bags.
I know. It was maddening. But all for the best, honestly, because they, continue to do what they do best. Right. In the end, Feed would not be here today had we been subsumed by the World Food Program. So at the moment, it felt like a big, you know, roadblock, but in reality, it's what has enabled us to do what we do.
So you see a lot of potential in this consumer area and opportunities for other kinds of products and other kinds of things that could be done.
It's very cool. like-minded brands like Tom's or Warby Parker, some of whom started right around feet or just after, just making, massive amounts of impact, as well as growing, really healthy and sizable consumer goods
Right.
brands. So I think there's a lot more to be done, and I think it's exciting for, people starting their careers now and thinking about wanting to make a difference first and foremost, but then what path to do so in. I just think there's so many more paths now than there were even 10 years ago.
I think that sometimes can sound a little confusing to
It
folks.
is I know. Good luck. No.
Yeah, just think about
Some kids are about to graduate. No,
you
it's wonderful.
Think about your
It's
grandfather's
exciting.
time, right? And when the
Yeah.
choices he might have had. But it is an exciting time to be able to think about. There's lots of ways to potentially
Yes.
approach the world, but it's also a little scary.
Yes.
So, well, wonderful. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Great questions.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to read your book.
Well, wasn't that just absolutely amazing and inspiring? If you feel truly inspired, there's a pop-up version of that forthcoming store out there in the lobby available, so you can check out the feed merchandise. But we want to make sure that Lauren doesn't forget about us. So we have a lovely plaque, suitable for hanging, which we'd like to share with you, because, everybody needs a bag and a plaque. So, thank you so much. This concludes this evening's event, which is the last for this academic year for the Mosbacher Institute. So thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you all in the fall. So drive carefully.